Welcome to episode number 5, The Rise of Physical AI. We made it this far. I'm your host, Val,
And I'm Peter.
and thanks for joining us again. And we're going to talk about what does this physical AI stuff mean? Peter, got to kick it off, man.
All right. So, a lot of people keep asking, is physical AI ready for the real world? The truth is, it already is, right? If you're driving around West Coast US, you're definitely dealing with Waymo taxi cabs. So you're already well acclimated with real world AI that's driving around and annoying you because you've already been stuck in a traffic jam as an account of them, right? But here's the kicker, right? But only if you control the world that it operates in.
Hmm. Interesting. You can't drop that and not elaborate.
Come on, just want to let it sit for a second and let them digest it.
Let it
Uh,
marinate.
yeah, right. Now you have to understand that you know when we're and we'll stick to the Waymo cab example, right? It's not just running an AI model under the hood. You have lidar, radar, cameras. You have highly curated maps that these things are running on. You have redundant compute systems, remote interventions teams. What does that mean? That means at any point in time, somebody is there and available to jump in and take control of this car should anything happen. And it's strict geofencing, right? These cabs cannot leave the area in which they operate in. So if you're in one city and you're trying to take a cab to another city that doesn't have Waymo cabs in there, you're not getting there, right? You could take it to the city limits, but then you got to get an Uber the rest of the way. Um, you know, and some of the things are, the physical, like I said, the physical AI works, but you have to constrain it enough, right? One of the things that we've seen over and over again, especially when it comes to self-driving cars and autonomous drones, is that vision has not been enough to constrain them, right? Vision can be buggy, they cannot react well to a certain instance in time of what exactly is happening in their surroundings, and it takes very strict training in order for it to do that. But you look at, I had a conversation with people at New York Power, and they were telling me how their drones actually use EMS to read the power lines, right, where those power lines are relative, and not relying on vision because vision did not work well. But using EMS, the drones are actually able to track the lines, so the drones can actually go across and take pictures of the infrastructure as it goes. And it's amazing, right? It's amazing that it can do something like that because what don't you have? You don't have to send somebody out there and go up 30, 40 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet of line across, right? You could do it with drones. And it's an amazing time for that to happen. And we're going to be talking about Waymo cabs, we're going to be talking about drones, and we're going to talk about the other one, right? Because I know you've seen it. You've seen it on the news. It's been there. These robots with an AI brain can now come into your house and clean your house. All right? Here's the kicker though, right? And here's the thing about all three that people really aren't having a conversation about. Now, when a large language model in a chat box gets something wrong, that's inconsequential because you always have a human there to actually support it. Because we know that everybody who's using AI responsibly is double checking their output, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we'll toss that out there. But what happens when it's physical AI that makes a mistake, right?
The Terminator.
Well, not well, yeah, not but we don't even have to go that far, right? What happens when your at-home cleaning bot is cleaning with knives, drops one, or is doing some weird motion with it and accidentally stabs Stephanie while she's trying to get a cup of coffee? There isn't actually a Stephanie, but it's just a point, right? We already know that Waymo cabs have hit people, have in their have caused a lot more mess. But it's an always on cap, right? It's actually pretty cool. I've seen a report from somebody who actually said they should actually just have their own lane for them, and that actually makes a lot of sense, right? Uh,
And I guess the thing that jumps to my mind is, pun intended, what's under the hood? How are these things working? Because in some ways, it's really not that much different than building an agent to build software as far as agent architecture. Now, obviously, you need a lot more because there's a lot more input and output. We're trying to mimic how we do things in the physical world, And sometimes we take for granted all of our senses. We take for granted some of the innate abilities that we have as people to kind of like use our instincts to know when something's off and when we can go in and react to something without even having to think about it. We're trying to recreate all these things that we've done as human beings for thousands and thousands of years into a technology that'll do it the same. And we know it's not that simple. How do these things work under the hood? High level, not in the weeds, high level. How do these things work under the hood?
Okay, so in the realm of like the Waymo, right? You have perception. What am I seeing? You have objects. You have lanes. You have signals. You have localization, right? This is the geofencing. Where am I exactly, right? Map matching, sensor fusion. It has an understanding of its environment because its environment was already mapped. It has prediction. What will others do, right? So you have pedestrians, you have cars. But okay, so when you think about it in terms of system, the AI is not the only one making the decision here either, right? There's deterministic systems in there. If there's a person in front, the deterministic system goes stop, right? You don't have to wait for the AI to actually process. Person in way, what should I do, right? Now imagine you have like a a chain of thought model going, there's a person in front, now it has to sit there and reason with itself and know what
Right.
to do next. In those 10 seconds, not only is it not going to be able to stop in time, but somebody's not going to get run over by a car. Right? Which isn't funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just laughing about thinking, yeah, it doesn't, whatever.
No, that person becomes a speed bump.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Then you have the planning phase, right? What should I do next? You have the trajectory generation, right? So, this is probably acting a GPS. How do you know that your GPS is navigating you in the right direction, right? This is all machine learning under the hood, where it's navigating. Some people complain about it. It's not going the right way, but there's some nuance to it because there's some neighborhoods that Google is not allowed to drive through with its
Yeah.
mapping. Um,
Doesn't have the data.
Yeah, so it doesn't have the data to go there, but it maps it to the fastest route possible, right? Then you have the control, right? Execute it physically. You have steering, braking, acceleration, and then you have like a fallback system. Well, what happens if something goes wrong? Now we know the fallback system is somebody is working. Somebody at Waymo is sitting there going, "Shit, I got to take control of this car
Yeah.
before it causes
Hand
a
on the red
catastrophe."
button.
Yeah, like it's not an LLM problem, right? It's not a large language model problem. It's a real-time distributed control system, right? So you have to think about it. There's all these checks and balances um, that are associated with it to actually make it work. It's not just a robot under the hood processing all of these things. It's a bunch of interlinked systems that are actually processing these things to actually make it work. Because if Waymo was out there running people over because it couldn't reason about it, it wouldn't it wouldn't be on the street right now, and Google would be losing massive amounts of money investing in that.
And oftentimes, cars like Waymo, Tesla, they're getting new pieces of information that they probably never been trained on before. What do they do in that time? What if they come across a scenario that has never been exposed to their data set, has never been sent to their data set? This is new information for the first time. They have to get it right. They can't say, "Oops, my bad. I didn't know. We never seen that before. We didn't know what to do." And then XYZ happened. So the systems have to be able to figure out what to do in new scenarios consistently. A new road was just built 2 weeks ago. That's not on anybody's maps, but it'll still have to be able to navigate that. And this is the tricky engineering and technical problems that we're experiencing, but the fact that we're overcoming them right now, we're not yesterday, I mean, not tomorrow, not next year, not hypothetically. These are things happening right now, which means that we're closer than we think to living in a world where, driving is an afterthought. Like why drive? I can go watch movies, I could do so much other things with that commute time other than actually drive. And for those who continue to drive, they're just doing it because they love it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But right now, with the current conditions, it doesn't operate in uncertainty. That's the thing, right? If it can drive very well in the cities and the areas that has been mapped for it, but it doesn't drive well in the situations in the areas where it hasn't been, right? And that's the situation that we're in today. Is it going to change tomorrow? Possibly, maybe, or maybe just more areas get mapped so it can keep up. Or, you know, I know that you're a big fan of Tesla's model of just straight vision, and I'll let you explain that. Go ahead, take it away, so I could.
Hey, I I I feel like most of the technology that we're building now is trying to mimic human behavior. The LLMs, the memory problems that are trying to be solved with LLMs, they're going back to how memory is being used with people. So the original plan for Tesla to try to mimic vision with how people drive seems like a sound approach. The only problem is that the models and all the other stuff that we just mentioned are not quite there, and that intermediary technology is something like Waymo, where you need a lot more to kind of fill in the gaps. So today, I don't think that that is the premier way to operate, because we don't know how it does in all of these edge cases. We know what's being reported, but we don't know what the real data is saying. But it may not be there just yet because what we're talking about, what does it do in those uncertain situations where you need that backup because lives are on the line? However, I do also believe that this is going to be a problem that's going to be solved when there is a minimum amount of data, that threshold that's met, where it can start to make these decisions, where the models get better at processing and reasoning, not just understanding it, but quickly making those decisions, the decisions that are in line with what a human would make. And now you don't need all that extra software anymore, or all the extra hardware, because it's like the models are working in their truest form. And I think Tesla will have the edge because they're kind of leaning in that space, where I'm not sure if Waymo's taking the same approach because they're so heavily relying on lidar. So today, I mean, the data says that we can't go against the data. The data is saying that Waymo's doing it pretty good right now, but I think in the long run, Tesla's trying to mimic how people drive, and once they really crack that code, it's going to be an explosion of the amount of vehicles that'll be able to just turn this on and start to drive on their own safely and accurately.
That was a much different tune than the one you had when the cameras were off. I'm just gonna make that claim. No, I'm just messing. I'm messing. Look,
Is
but
slightly. I didn't want to give you too much ammo to set me up, so I had to give you breadcrumbs here and there, so you don't give me the counterpoints. I kind of keep you off your balance, man.
look, I accept. I accept. But here's one of the things also, right? Even when we're driving, spatial perception, reaction time, that triggers across our nervous system. And while we can map a lot of those things in human beings, do you think that scientists actually know enough about how the human brain works to be able to actually create? Here's one of the big things that I have with a lot of the way a lot of these companies operate is that they keep trying to have it run like a human being. It's not a human being. These are all we don't have fully grasped. Like when people are talking about the medical field, like we still don't even know how kidneys work. We know what they do. Do we know how it works? No, right? Like you talk to a doctor, like my father's in a medical situation now, and I'm trying to get some answers, and they're like, "Well, honestly, we don't know enough about kidneys to know what's going to happen next." And I'm okay. Like you have your statistics based on directionally, right? What happens after this? But you can't say with any certainty because you just don't have enough awareness. Now I'm taking that full circle, but is it are human beings actually a mix of internal systems that leads us to be able to operate the way we do, right? And I think that's an important question to ask because if it is, then the multi-system setup that Google and Waymo have pushed out is closest to what a human being actually does. And if you're actually having just an AI by itself process something, you're missing part of that. You're missing part of the formula, right? And I think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they could do it or not. But I feel like what we have right now Is it good enough? I mean, if you talk to people on the West Coast, they hate Waymos. Like, some people love them.
Yeah.
They're like
I mean, you just go on social media. There's people that have gotten into accidents. Yeah, and who do you blame? You know, there's you blame the guy at Waymo with the hand on the red button, waiting to emergency abort. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of great footage from people that have interacted with the cars outside of the people that actually use it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Uh, but let's move on to drones because I know, again, both of us have a big love for that, for drones. I mean, I love the vision, the field of vision, right? But when it comes to drones, I completely understand why vision could be the limiting factor in there, right? You have foliage, you have day night diurnal cycles. Well, that just means day night cycles. Just a fancy way of saying it. Diurnal cycles. Just dense
Fancy
foliage.
schmancy.
Yeah, right. It's a thing I learned. Okay, I'm trying to show off.
Oh, be
Um,
schmancy on us. Schmancy.
you know, EMS. You know, the the electromagnetic sensing EMS doesn't care about any of those things. It's able to sense those lines and snap pictures, and then you have the vision actually processing the pictures in the back end. But I think it's so cool because you have LiDAR mapping associated with it, so it can see its area, so it has an understanding of which direction it needs to fly in. But it's relying on the EMS to actually follow the power lines, and then it snaps thousands and thousands of photos, so it could bring it back to it could bring it back to home base, and then they could process the photos to make sure everything looks right and tight. And if it doesn't, then they can send people or another. I saw this video of a robot actually traveling across electrical lines, changing certain couplings, and that was absolutely insane for me
That's
because
so cool.
it's awesome, but they're coming for everybody. So it's
Yeah.
like it's like it's helpful. It's helpful in the sense it's helpful in the sense that human beings aren't going to have to go up hundreds of feet in order to manage these couplings on these, right, across power lines, which is much safer for us humans. But I still feel like an important part of it is still making sure that a human being is still part of the loop in order to monitor what these bots are doing, right? They don't have just free free leeway. So, they have camera, which is a visual detection, which is machine learning. They have LiDAR, which is distance and structure. They have the EM sensor, which is like the field detection. They have our EMU GPS position and orientation, right? And they have like the fusion layer, which builds confidence scores and confirms with them that their trajectory is appropriate, right? Um, and we're seeing it again, right? We're seeing this again in autonomous drones. It's the same. It's no different. EMS is a different portion of it, but it's the same way that the Waymo taxi cabs drive, right?
Yeah, and in that way, it makes a lot more sense for a drone just because the environment changes regularly as opposed to a road that's predetermined. There's so many things other that a drone has to kind of consider when it's flying in the air. I mean, it has to consider other birds. Is it food for another bird, or is it prey? Is it how does it operate when it's windy, cloudy, foggy? All these things it has to consider. So that makes total sense. And I guess the bigger thing is that, this industry is so massive. I don't think we really can grasp what's happening because you're saying this for power plants, but as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, well, can this same technology be used with a team of firefighters to go in and scan a building to see if there's any people at the 10th or 11th floor? Can one day that same drone drop a CO2 bomb to try to extinguish a fire from a safe distance? Hey, heck, can it run a hose on its own? And now you have a team of drones that are shooting water into a building. I'm thinking about, can police officers use the same thing? Can emergency teams use it in disaster areas where they're scanning for people who may be in rubble or need emergency services like water or some sort of aid that a physical person can't deliver to them immediately. And these all require similar but different AI systems to deliver these resources to the end or intended goal. And these are just really, really interesting concepts of how AI is being infused with technology and with physical technology, robotics, to add tremendous amount of value in ways that we it wasn't really a thing ever before.
Yeah, I think that it's amazing that it can actually do a lot of those things, right? And I think it's amazing, like, imagine you swap out EMS for some sort of, heat detection, right? So you or some way to find actual biological life, especially in a fire in the example that you picked. I think it would be amazing to be able to see that because then you could actually determine whether or not it's appropriate to actually throw firefighters into that mix in the first place, right? Because if there's a person there, then obviously it's worth the risk, but if there's not, then there's no reason to risk for the human life, and I think that's it's a big thing, and I think would save a lot of firefighters' lives, and I mean, who doesn't appreciate a firefighter, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you
uh,
don't, wait until a fire happens.
yeah, while you running out the building, they're running towards it, so enough
Yeah, you
said,
know?
right? Enough said, um,
Yeah.
and okay, so now we bring in to our 3rd point, and that is the at-home robots, which I think is extremely interesting because they don't necessarily have lidar. They have some detection, but it's not actually clear on what they're using. They
Close
don't
to the
have their
Tesla.
they don't have their area mapped, right? So how do they navigate, right? And okay, so a lot of this is in tight knit circles. A lot of it is closed. None of these are like public companies that are pushing this. So a lot of the secret sauce is hidden. But what do we know? We know that we can map 3D scenarios, right? Um, we know we this is used for real estate all the time. Map it. You have 3D virtual walkthroughs. So is that what they're using? Like they're sending a robot before they send a robot into somebody's house? Are they able to map the inside of these people's house with a virtual 3D, stick it in there, and then have just like have a world model just running through the scenario of walking through this area? But what does that mean? What does that mean for the robot itself? How does it understand enough physics to apply enough force to actually do a thing, open a door, open a refrigerator without breaking off a handle or breaking the dishwasher or washing dishes or even just something as simple as like cutting fruit, right? Does a virtual environment actually map cleanly to a physical environment? And the answer to that we know is no, right? We know that right now, today, the answer to that is no. But now we're in a situation where we're beyond Roombas, and now we're talking about actually having robots in our house doing our laundry and cleaning. Even some in companions. Now, I don't know if this is appropriate for a YouTube channel, but there's companion robots out there that are also kind of crazy. But that's maybe
Yeah,
for a
this is
different episode, the
the
highly
YouTube After
explicit
Dark.
YouTube After Dark, right? But there's I mean that leads more into some sort of weird, not weird, right? Some people are looking for companionship sometimes, and if there's companionship available, even if let's not highlight the sexual orientation of what that could mean. Well, let's highlight just having a robot there for somebody who's lonely, somebody you can actually have a conversation with, and have some sort of discourse with, so the person doesn't feel like they're by themselves. And I think that's an amazing just thought to have, especially with people who have some sort of mental illness. But there's a danger to that too, right? There's a danger to being highly reliant on a robot because then you're in a situation where social situations aren't going to be the same for you. You're going to be less inclined to actually socialize with actual human beings if you have this robot at home that's this ever sycophantic robot that's going to that's its main purpose is to please you in discourse, whatever that may be.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you touch on so many points. I don't even know if we could cover all this in this episode, um, because these are things that we have to consider. Because even in that case, the first thing I think of is who's training these robots. When you're talking about getting too used to having a conversation with an AI, there's tremendous benefits to being able to talk through something with an AI agent or a model that I think is completely healthy. Uh, Only relying on that, I think, takes away from the pushback that you'll get from talking to a human. The nuances of conversation that are necessary for a relationship to grow, but for you to grow as a person as well. And I'm curious as to how you know, when it becomes more common that these robots are in homes, will that be a part of that robot's duties? Does it just stand there like an ornament and do its task, or does it have these kind of qualities baked in where you can talk to it about stuff? Because, you know, from a product standpoint, if I'm gonna have that large piece of machinery clomping around my home, especially it's not gonna be something that's cheap, then should I have a bunch of other devices as well? Meaning, like, should I have a Amazon Echo where I should be able to just talk to this device and find out what the temperature is, what's going on. If it's there and it's I'm passing by it, I should be able to ask it questions, but where does that start and where does that stop? Because once we introduce that, now you're talking about what's the character of that model that's being infused with that robot, and is that in line with what people should be interacting with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even to go a step further, even with its physical interactions, right now, well, I read it. Basically, what they're having is the people who order these robots that got sent to their homes, they actually have to schedule for a human operator to operate the robots to navigate around the house until it's trained enough. What does that mean, right? How long does it take? So you're basically hiring a cleaning person that's operating a robot right now. That costs you an enormous amount of money. They said, "Oh, it can do some tasks." There's some tasks that it can absolutely do out of the gate, but for a lot of other ones, it's going to require a human operator to do. So what does that mean? And now you have to schedule a human operator to do it. Is there right? I just spent $20,000 on a robot. How much does this cost if I have to, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the subscription service on this? What is this going to actually cost me? What does this cost a person? Who are they actually marketing this to? Is it just cool? Is it just cool? Is it something novel, right? Or is it something that, y- uh, Deborah and Kyle are going to be able to buy for Christmas, that, yay, we don't have to clean the house anymore, right? What do the costs actually look like? It's like buying a car, right? It's basically the price of buying a car right now. I mean, I know in China they were saying that they have these robots ready to roll out for $10,000, and that's amazing. That's half the price of what it's costing.
Insane, man.
But in terms of how China's rolling this out, it appears that they already have police assistance robots. They already have their whole game is and it's interesting to see because everyone, man, everyone looks at them and in a very negative light. It's China, it's China, it's China. But when you see what they're doing, a lot of what they're doing is they're trying to roll this out, and it's actually making a lot of scenarios easier and more efficient to work with these
Yeah.
robots.
And
And
they're leading the charge, you know? I mean, I saw some robots dancing and doing kung fu and all these kind of things, and I'm just looking at the advancements that they're making in technology, you know, for bipedal robots that can keep its balance, that can move, with some level of agility that you didn't think a robot had, the spatial awareness to be able to always land on its feet and understand that this is level, this is the floor, me leaning forward and back, me understanding the environment around me. Even if it's a human operator jumps in there from time to time, the physical technology is there, and they're just going to need to close some gaps. But what you're saying sounds like the technology ground level is there, but to get it to the place where we think, robots should be, we're still not quite there. Is that what you're saying?
if so, okay, so let's be more direct with what it is exactly that I am trying to convey here. In controlled environments, we are there already, right? Now, when it comes to uncontrolled environments and new experiences for some of these things, we are not there. And it's not going to be able to navigate these novel scenarios and have these novel experiences. And it's not going to know. You don't want to introduce uncertainty when you're on when you're pushing out physical AI. Because like we started with, when you're using a chat box and it goes wrong, or or your experience goes awry, it's inconsequential. When you have a piece of physical AI that's out there in the world and it goes awry, that's that's a catastrophe waiting to happen. That's a liability, right?
It's
That's
a
a
lost eyeball.
it's a lost eyeball, if not worse, right? Because we only touched on three things. We touched on drones, we touched on taxi cabs, and we're touching on you know at home robots. But there's also manufacturing, right? These all exist on multiple layers, but that's a much longer conversation. And for the sake of a podcast that a human being is actually going to sit down and listen to, we have to focus on on a few
Yeah.
things. Look, I'd love to sit here and explain it to you, got everything, and have this whole conversation, but a human attention span is 45 minutes, and even then, you guys are getting that. Whether or not I'm getting that full 45 minutes is a toss up in the air. It, it's something that I love this, I love these topics of conversation. And I think the drones, and I think Waymo Taxi Cab right now today got it, right? In these controlled environments, it works. Whether you hate Waymo, it's driving people around. It's limiting, if this was a catastrophe waiting to happen, it would be pulled off. It would be they wouldn't be having the license to be able to do this and to run it, and it'd be pulled off the streets. So it's not as consequential as the perspective of a lot of people who hate it is. But I get it, right? Who wants to sit in a fucking damn it, I said a curse word. Anyway, who wants to sit in a traffic jam that's caused by AI ran taxi cabs, right? Because you can't even curse at the person, right? You're sitting there, you're angry, you're pissed off. You don't have anybody to road rage against because there's nobody actually driving the thing. It's just driving itself. So you just, you're basically just cursing at the sky in your car. You're pissed off, and you have nowhere to release it. So you'd rather there be a person there so you can say some shit to them.
What's a New Yorker to do, brother? This is gonna be. Is this gonna bring peace to New York drivers?
No,
Nobody to curse at, nobody
no,
to get pissed at.
they're just
This
going to be
is
stroking out in their car because it's nowhere to, right. Um,
Waymo,
yeah.
Waymo.
I mean, but look, we didn't make AI fully understand the world that we live in, right? We already struggle with that. Pre-trained models do not experience the same kind of world that we live in. We made the world a little bit easier for the AI to operate in, right? With the ability to map cities, predefine routes, simplify tasks, things like that, right? Um, we give it constraints in order, and it can follow those constraints, and it can keep those guardrails on, and it can do those tasks. I'm really curious to see how the human robot thing kind of pans out. It's not set in stone yet, right? We are going to start see. I mean, by the end of the year, you're going to see people. You're going to see TikToks of people with at-home robots.
Absolutely. I can't. I'll be surprised if I didn't. Seeing as how you could buy some of these robots now for like 80 grand. You know, I see it happening. The question is how quickly can these companies close these gaps that you're talking about? Because you made a solid point. All the technology we're talking about, even in the drones, even with the drones, I'm almost positive that they have some level of geofencing to kind of contain how these drones are operating. It's not quite ready to go off script just yet, but it is ready to follow the script that it's been given, and it's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, AI is already in the real world, right? It's driving cars, it's flying drones, it's operating in homes, but it's not doing it because it understands everything. I think that's the point that we're driving home here. It's doing it because we've engineered just enough of the world to make it possible, right? Physical AI equals control systems plus AI components. And
Well, I like that. Sounds very poetic. My goodness.
you gotta leave them with a banger at the end.
All we needed to do is talk about robots for you to bust out the poetry.
What can I say? I'm a modern day Shakespeare over here.
I like it. I like it.
But guys, thank you so much. This is the 5th episode. I'm in disbelief that we're 5 episodes in and people are actually watching us, but it's pretty cool. But anyway, you have a great one. See you guys next week. Well, we might actually tackle something a little bit deeper and a little bit more thought provoking. And I think you guys will find it really cool and to tune into that. But have a good one. See you guys
Take care,
later.
guys.